Hello, dear students. I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to a new lecture. In this lecture, we're starting with the reading comprehension workshop. We are still in unit number 4, expressing feelings, and we are starting with the second lesson, the girl who wrote her dad a letter to cope with his death and got a response. So the essential question in this lesson, how caring for people in your community can minimize the effect of others' great loss. Great loss, which means if someone lost someone else, someone died, and that person is being affected by their death, how your help would minimize this effect. So let's start by trying to find out the meaning of these words, which are highlighted in yellow in each sentence, using the context clues. First vocabulary word is sobbing. I heard a child sobbing loudly, but I didn't see his tears. So as you can see from the context, we have the word tear, sobbing without tears, which means crying, okay? Surge, I felt a surge of panic when I realized my mistake. A surge of panic, a drive, a rush of panic, okay? Coping with problems makes strong people feel better because they can deal with their problems to overcome them. So the first part of this sentence is written similarly in the other part, but in other words. Again, coping with problems makes strong people feel better. Then we said they can deal with their problems. So coping with the problems means dealing with the problems makes them overcome them or feel better. So coping with means dealing effectively with a problem. Then funeral, he died on Wednesday and his funeral would be the next day. Funeral is the day in which they make the ceremony for his death and they bury that person, okay? Inconsolable, they were inconsolable after the death of their young son. Inconsolable, which means they were in grief and not able to accept, okay, the situation. Then tucked in, Sammy tucked in his shirt and did up his trousers with a smile. Tucked in, like to put something between two things or inside something else, like he tucked himself inside his shirt. Emblazoned, the team's logo was emblazoned on the baseball caps. So emblazoned, like printed, designed, and snagged. I snagged my sweater on the wire fence. Snagged, like ripped it off on the fence, okay? So this is how we use the context clues to figure out the meaning of a vocabulary word. So here are the meanings. Sobbing, crying noisily. Surge is a sudden, powerful movement or rush or stream or flow. The surge of panic, the rush of panic, okay? Then coping with means to deal effectively with something difficult or with a problem. Funeral is the ceremony or the service that people hold shortly after a person's death. Usually it includes the person's burial and the cremation. Tucked in means to fold or gather something or push it under something else, like Sammy tucked in himself the shirt. Inconsolable, like the grief of the person, not able to be comfortable or elevated from this grief. He's heartbroken or in a great despair after someone's death. So it's inconsolable, not being able to accept it. Emblazoned, like decorated, designed, printed, snagged to tear or rip something on a sharp projection. Now, what's the genre of the selection that we're going to read today? It's a short story similar to the narrative that we wrote. It's a short story and we already know what the key elements are for a short story. First, we should have the settings, where and when the story took place in the past tense, the characters, who are the people performing the actions, and speaking or saying the dialogue. Remember the dialogue, but the characters in a story say to each other, and They are the who of the story. So where, when, and who are the characters. The plot, which means the main events that happened in the story. What is the story? What's the story itself? What are the events? Then the conflict, the main problem or challenge that the main character is facing in the story. Like we have cause and effect in the events. The conflict gives these events their why. Like, why are these events happening? The events are presented and then the conflict makes them clear. Then the theme. What's the moral or the message that the reader would get from reading the story? So what is the writer trying to express through this story? What are you trying to teach me through this story? Okay, so let's start reading. Desiree was only 4. This story is about a girl called Desiree whose dad died and she was in a great despair, not accepting it. She wrote her dad a letter and she got a response. Now, we said the essential question is the importance of help in community, helping someone who is in great despair. So some people who do not know who Desiree is are going to help her cope with her dad's death. Okay, so that's mainly the story. I'm introducing it to you so that you would have a clear idea before we start reading. Desiree was only 4 when she lost her dad. She desperately wanted to talk to him one last time. So imagine a 4-year-old kid who thinks her dad is coming back and she's always talking to him. Let's start with paragraph number 1. Rhonda Gill froze as she heard her 4-year-old daughter, Desiree, sobbing quietly in the family room that morning in October 8, 1993. So sobbing, crying quietly. Rhonda tiptoed through the doorway. The tiny child was hugging a photograph of her father, who had died 9 months earlier. Rhonda, the mother of Desiree, she's 24 years old, watched as Desiree gently ran her fingers around her father's face. Daddy, she said softly, why won't you come back? The petite student felt a surge of despair, a rush of despair. It had been hard enough coping with the death of her husband, dealing with the death of her husband, who is Ken Gill. Now we're talking about the mother. But her daughter's, which is Desiree, her daughter's grief was more than she could bear. Okay, so the mother couldn't know what to do with the daughter's grief because she couldn't accept her dad's death. Ken and Rhonda of Yuba City, California, these are the parents of Desiree before the dad dies. They had met when Rhonda was 18, the mother was 18, and they married after a whirlwind courtship, after a long love story. Their daughter, Desiree, was born on January 9, 1986, when Ken was a gentleman whom everyone loved. His passion was his daughter. She's a real daddy's girl. Rhonda would often say, as Ken's eyes twinkled with pride, father and daughter went everywhere together, hiking, dune buggy riding, and fishing for bass and salmon on the Feather River. Okay, so the relation or the connection was so strong between the father and the daughter. The daughter was his passion, and they used to go to different places and do activities together, like hiking, dune buggy riding, fishing, bass and salmon, and on the Feather River. Instead of gradually adjusting to her father's death, coping with it, getting used to it, Desiree refused to accept it. Daddy will be home soon, she'd tell her mother. He's at work. When she played with her toy telephone, she pretended she was chatting with him. I miss you, Daddy, she said. She'd say, when will you come back? Immediately after Ken's death, Rhonda moved from her apartment in Yuba City to her mother's home in nearby Live Oak. 7 weeks after the funeral, Desiree was still inconsolable. I just don't know what to do, Rhonda told her mother. So the mother told the grandmother she doesn't know what to do because Desiree is not accepting her dad's death. Trish Moore, a 47-year-old medical assistant. As a last resort, Trish took Desiree to Ken's grave, hoping it would help her come to terms with his death. The child laid her head against his gravestone and said, "Maybe if I listen hard enough, I can hear Daddy talk to me." Then one evening, as Rhonda tucked her child in, Desiree announced, "I want to die, Mommy, so I can be with Daddy." "God help me," Rhonda prayed. "What more can I do?" November 8, 1993 would have been Ken's 29th birthday. "How will I send him a card?" Desiree asked her grandmother. "What about if we tie a letter to a balloon," Trish said, "and send it up to heaven?" Desiree's eyes immediately lit up. On the way to the cemetery, the back seat of the car full of flowers for their planned graveside visit. The three stopped at a store. "Help Mom pick out a balloon, Trish instructed. At a rack were dozens of silver helium-filled Mylar balloons bobbed. Desiree made an instant decision. That one. "Happy Birthday" was emblazoned above a drawing of Ariel from the Disney film The Little Mermaid. Okay, so the balloon had the image of, or the picture of Ariel from the Disney film The Little Mermaid, and emblazoned or printed on this image, "Happy Birthday." Desiree and her father had often watched it. That's why she chose this specific balloon. The child's eyes shone as they arranged flowers on Ken's grave. Desiree dictated a letter to her dad, so she wrote a letter to her dad. "Tell him, happy birthday, I love you and miss you." She rattled off. "I hope you get this and can write to me on my birthday in January." Trish wrote the message and their address on a small piece of paper, which was then wrapped in plastic and tied to the end of the string on the balloon. Finally, Desiree released the balloon. So she released it in the air, hoping the balloon is going to the heaven where her dad is. He can get her message and reply to her, and also send her a birthday gift on her birthday in January. Okay? Now, paragraph 5. For almost an hour, they watched the shining spot of silver grow smaller, so as it's going farther away. "Okay," Trish said at last, "time to go home." Rhonda and Trish were beginning to walk slowly from the grave when they heard Desiree shout excitedly, "Did you see that? I saw Daddy reach down and take it." So after she can't see the balloon anymore in the sky, she said Daddy took it. The balloon, visible just moments earlier, had disappeared. "Now Dad's going to write back to me," Desiree declared as she walked past them toward the car. On a cold November morning on Prince Edward Island in eastern Canada, 32-year-old Wade McKinnon pulled on his waterproof duck hunting gear and jumped into his pickup. Wade, who's a forest ranger, lived with his wife and 3 children in Mermaid, a rural community a few miles east of Charlottetown. He drove to Mermaid Lake, 2 miles away. In the bushes on the shoreline, something fluttered and caught his eye. Curious, he approached to find a silver balloon snagged in the branches of a thigh-high bayberry bush. Okay? Printed on one side was a picture of a mermaid. When he untangled the string, he found a soggy piece of paper at the end of it, wrapped in plastic. So he found the balloon and the letter that Desiree wrote her dad. At home, Wade carefully removed the wet note, allowing it to dry. When his wife, Donna McKinnon, came home later, he said, "Look at this," and showed her the balloon and note. Intrigued, she read, November 8, 1993. "Happy birthday, Daddy," etc. It finished with a mailing address in Live Oak, California. "It's only November 12, Wade exclaimed. "This balloon traveled 3,000 miles in 4 days. And look," said Donna, "this is a Little Mermaid balloon and it landed at Mermaid Lake. What a coincidence." We have to write to Desiree, Wade said. So the man who found the balloon said we have to write back a letter to Desiree telling her this is the letter from her dad. Maybe we were chosen to help this girl, this little girl. So remember the essential question, helping people in our community, especially those who lost someone, and helping them cope with it. So these two, this couple, are going to help Desiree cope with her dad's death. So we have to write to Desiree, Wade said. Maybe we were chosen to help this little girl, but he could see that his wife didn't feel the same way. With tears in her eyes, Donna stepped away from the balloon. Such a young girl having to deal with death, it's awful, she said. Wade placed the note in a drawer and tied the balloon to the railing of the balcony in their living room. But the sight of the balloon made Donna uncomfortable. A few days later, she stuffed it in a closet. Our three children are so lucky, she thought. Donna, okay? She's thinking that their three children are so lucky. They have two healthy parents. She imagined how their daughter, Haley, almost 2 years old, would feel if Wade were to die. The next morning, Donna said to Wade, "You're right, we have to try to help Desiree." In a Charlottetown bookstore, Donna bought an adaptation of The Little Mermaid, which is the Disney movie. A few days later, Wade brought home a birthday card that read, "For a dear daughter, loving birthday wishes." Donna sat down one morning to write a letter to Desiree. When she finished, she tucked it into the birthday card, wrapped it up with the book, and mailed the gift on January 3, 1994. Desiree's fifth birthday came and went quietly with a small party on January 9. Every day since they had released the balloon, Desiree had asked Rhonda, "Do you think Daddy has my balloon yet?" After her party, she stopped asking. Why is that? Because if he had the balloon, he would have replied already. Late on the afternoon of January 19, the McKinnon's package arrived. Busy cooking dinner, Trish looked at the unfamiliar return address and assumed it was a birthday gift for Desiree from someone in Ken's family. Rhonda and Desiree had moved back to Yuba City, so Trish decided to deliver it to Rhonda the next day. As Trish watched television that evening, a thought nagged at her. Why would someone send a parcel for Desiree to this address? She opened the package and found the card, "For a dear daughter." Her heart raced. Dear God, she thought, and she reached for the telephone. It was after midnight, but she had to call Rhonda. When Trish, eyes red from weeping, pulled at Rhonda's driveway the next morning at 6:45, her daughter and granddaughter were already up. Rhonda and Trish sat Desiree between them on the couch. Trish said, "Desiree, this is for you," and handed her the parcel. "It's from your daddy, I know," said Desiree, factly, like the matter of fact. So Desiree knows as a fact this should be from her dad. Her grandma read it to her. "Here, grandma, read it to me." So she gave it to her grandma to read it for her. She started reading the following. So this is what was written in the letter. "Happy birthday from your daddy," Trish began. "I guess you must be wondering who we are. Well, it all started in November when my husband Wade went duck hunting. Guess what he found? A mermaid balloon that you sent your daddy." Trish paused. A tear began to trickle down Desiree's cheek. "There are no stores in heaven. So your daddy wanted someone to do his shopping for him. I think he picked us because we live in a town called Mermaid." Trish continued reading. "I know your daddy would want you to be happy and not sad. I know he loves you very much and will always be watching over you. Lots of love, the McKinnons." When Trish finished, she looked at Desiree. "I knew Daddy would find a way not to forget me," the child said. Wiping the tears from her eyes, Trish began to read the Little Mermaid book that the McKinnons had sent. The story was different from the one Ken had so often read to the child. In that version, the mermaid lives happily ever after with the handsome prince. But in this one, She dies because a wicked witch has taken her tail. Three angels carry her away. As Trish finished reading, she worried that the ending would upset her granddaughter. But Desiree put her hands on her cheeks with delight. She goes to heaven. She cried. That's why Daddy sent me this book, because the mermaid goes to heaven just like him. In mid-February, the McKinnons received a letter from Rhonda. On January 19, my little girl's dream came true when your parcel arrived. In the months after, whenever Desiree wanted to talk about her dad, she called the McKinnons. A few minutes on the phone soothed her as nothing else could. So let me rephrase everything that I've read so far. Okay, there's a child, a girl who's called Desiree, whose her dad died and she couldn't accept it. So she wrote him a letter, tucked it in a balloon, and sent it in the air. And then another family found it. This family decided to help her. So they wrote her back a letter and told her, this letter is from your dad. Your dad asked us to write this for you. And they knew there's a purpose for choosing the mermaid balloon. That's why they chose the Little Mermaid book. Okay. Now, this letter from this family really helped this little child cope with her dad's death. She got into terms, and in which her dad, she knows now her dad won't be back. However, one day when she dies, she's going to meet him in heaven, and she knows that she can always contact him by contacting this family, and that her dad always loves her. So now she can deal with his death in this way, okay? So people tell me, what a coincidence, what your mermaid balloon landed so far away at a place called Mermaid Lake, said Rhonda. But we know Ken picked the McKinnons as a way to send his love to Desiree. She understands now that her father is with her always, okay? Now she knows and understands that even though her father died and she can't see him physically and talk to him directly face to face, she can talk to him and he loves her and he's always with her. Okay, so that's what happened because of that family helped her. That's how it's important to help people in our community, especially those who lost someone close to them. Okay, so now we start with the comprehension questions. We're going to answer them using our own words based on the passage. Why was Desiree sobbing? Because she lost her dad. Okay, now I'm saying it orally and simply you write the answer in your own words. What kind of child-dad relationship did Desiree have? And give the evidence. They were so close and the daughter was her dad's passion. You give evidence, you tell me all the activities they did together from the text. Skim paragraph 2 to state Desiree's main problem. Her main problem is that she cannot accept her dad's death. She thinks he's coming back. Well, Desiree on November 8, 1993 explained how. We said this family helped her and how by writing her this letter telling her that the balloon landed in a place where they are living called the Mermaid Lake. And this wasn't a coincidence. They told her, your dad chose us and this is what your dad wants you to know. Now, question 5, which balloon did she choose and why? She chose that balloon with the mermaid picture because that's what her and her dad used to read always. They used to read this story about Ariel in the Disney movie, the Ariel, okay? Now refer to paragraph 5 to describe the little girl's feelings when releasing the balloon. How did she feel? She felt a little bit relieved, if you remember. She felt that she have contacted her dad and that she had hope that is going to talk to her back, okay? So when someone wants someone else and they see that person, you know how they feel, relieved. So when they sent the balloon, she felt relieved. She felt that, yeah, I contacted him and he's going to contact me back. Now, what was Donna's real motive for helping Desiree? Donna, that other parent, She thought of her own children, if you remember, and she said, if her child lost her dad, it would be so awful. And that's how she reached the conclusion that, yes, they should help Desiree cope with her dad's death. Now, question number 8, based on paragraphs 12 and 13, what impact did the letter and the book have on Desiree? We know the impact. She accepted it. The conclusion that I said at the end, she accepted and understood, and she came to terms that her dad loves her and he is with her, even though she wouldn't be able to see him face to face again. Question 9, what would have happened if McKinnon's family had neglected Desiree's letter? What do you think would have happened? Her heart would be broken more. She would still be in grief, and maybe she would think that her dad left her, right? Now you're going to complete the following sentences with information based on your understanding of the text. I will leave this for you. Here you have to fill in the chart below. You're going to read the text and then find text clues in the chart to draw a reasonable conclusion based on what you know. You have the text clue here. With tears in her eyes, Donna stepped away from the balloon. Such a young girl having to deal with death. It's awful, she said. What do you know about what's being written here? And what do you conclude from what you're reading? This is talking about Donna, okay? Donna sent a reply that gave Desiree a reason to smile and have some comfort. Also, what do you know from here? What you're reading? What do you conclude from this? Here you have extracts A and B, and there are 14 paragraphs in this story. Each of these extracts completes one of the 14 paragraphs. So there are 2 paragraphs that are going to be completed by these extracts. You're going to read the extracts. I read extract A, and I choose which paragraph in the text does it complete. 1, 2, 3, up to 14, which one? Same for extract B. You have to read it and tell me which paragraph in the text does it complete. All right. Here you have to use context clues in the paragraphs here, like the word bobbed in paragraph 4. You read this vocabulary word in paragraph 4. You try to find its meaning in paragraph 4, then use it correctly here to fill in the blanks, okay? Now here you have 6 vocabulary words and 4 spaces, so 2 will be eliminated, all right? And then here is a graphic organizer for you to deduce the settings, characters, plot, conflict, main event, solution, and the theme of the above story. And here is the answer key. I already explained everything and how to answer, okay? Now, extract A completes paragraph 8, extract B completes paragraph 13. That's how you have to answer. For example, here also part C, you know about this clue that when someone sympathizes or feels with others, this means she will give help to others, because she said this is awful and she decided that they should help her. What's the conclusion? Donna was helpful. She thought of a way to help the young girl. Here, Donna sent a reply that gave Desiree a reason to smile and have some comfort. What do you know that's being said here? That when someone sends a reply that may relieve others, this means that she cares for others. So what's the conclusion? Donna cares for others because she cared for Desiree. Now here's a speaking activity. This is not the speaking activity that you have for this week. That one is uploaded on the Padlet, but this is an extra one which I'll be asking you later to talk about father-daughter relationship, okay? And then writing also, here is a writing prompt, not for this week, but later I would be asking you to write about it. You have to write the story of an orphan child, which means lost one of his parents or both of them, okay? And you have to tell us what difficulties he or she faced as a member of a very poor family. And here you have different sentences in which you can use to start your story, okay? Now here's a speaking activity in which you describe a friend or someone you know who was depressed, and then you tell us what are the symptoms of the depression and how this person felt. You suggest the solution to help this person when to overcome this serious situation. Okay, again, this is not for this week. I would be asking you later to do this. Now, by now, our lecture comes to an end. I hope that the story was clear, the comprehension questions and how we solved them. Everything was clear. If you have any question or concern, do not hesitate to contact me on my email, mohsen.ischooli@gmail.com. Thank you and have a nice day.